Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gainer Gossip. I am Pluto, and with me, as always, is.
Hey guys, it's Jenny here. Nice
And
to have you back.
today we have a very special guest. You might know him as Baron Victor Temple from LA by Night. Um, my first introduction to him was Marcy the Typhoon on Dimension 20's Pirates of Leviathan, because I am Dimension 20 crazy. But he's also the undisputed wizard of the coast himself. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to those who don't know who you are, B.Dave?
That's the dozens and dozens of my fans there cheering. Yeah. B.Dave Walters. I say words about things. You can find me wherever fine streaming content can be located. Done all sorts of streams for Wizards of the Coast, DM for the cast of Stranger Things, host of Invitation to Party, the first D&D game on television, author of the official comic book Dungeons and Dragons: A Dark and Wish, etc., etc., etc.
Awesome. So many big things. So let's just get into it. I'll start off with a simple question I kind of ask everyone. What kind of got you into tabletop in the first place? I know you've probably talked about this many times, but like probably when you were a kid, I assume, like what got you to play and then how did it lead to this?
You know, it's the same thing. Like people ask me how tall I am, and they're like, "How many times have you been asked that?" And I'm like, thousands of times, but this person's only asked me once. Yeah, got started playing when I was 13. First got into a game called Rifts. Um, from Palladium, which is this wild sort of multiversal kind of hodgepodge game that is
Hmm.
very crunchy. And a buddy of mine who was a hipster before hipsters were hipsters was like, if you're gonna play a game, you got to play D&D. And so got into second edition. First character was a fighter mage thief based on Vampire Hunter D. Big floppy hat, long sword, and haven't looked back.
Love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't. I feel so behind when I bring everyone on because I didn't get into D&D until like right when COVID hit, like right little bit before, and then dived more into it once. We couldn't go anywhere. So yeah,
There's a reason why D&D specifically and streaming in general blew up during that time because everybody was home.
yeah.
No, there's no wrong time to get into it. Like there's a lot of people try and be like, "Oh, you just started playing." Blah. It's like, bro, whatever. Just let people have a good time. Let people enjoy things. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, there's still those people that are like,
Right.
"Oh, I'm the experienced one. I know what's going on," and like you just have to listen to my opinion because I obviously know everything. I've been playing it for longer than you've been alive. So
You know,
eh,
some of the worst players and dungeon masters I know have been doing it longer than I've been alive, and I'm like, but you learned nothing. So what difference does it make?
yeah,
Yeah.
my first experience with D&D was a Westmart server, and some of the people in there were the most toxic people I've ever played with. And some of them were in like their 40s and 50s, and like, "Oh yeah, I've been playing it." I'm like, "Bro, this isn't fun. I don't know what you're talking about. But, like, this is not enjoyable."
Well, it's also the game has changed over time. Like back in the
Hmm.
day, it was very adversarial. The game was PvP. Like the dungeon master was trying to kill you, and the players were trying to survive, and that was what it was about. And it has evolved into a far more enjoyable collaborative storytelling experience, where death may or may not be a consequence of what
Hmm.
happens, but it's not what you sit down at the table for. Yeah, back in the day, like Temple of Elemental Evil, where it's like, oh, you walk through that door, oh, it's a disintegration portal, you're dead. Huh, that's fun, right? Womp womp. And then you hear the stories of the DM taking people's character sheets and ripping them in half and stuff, and I'm like, ah, bro. But they didn't have an internet, so they didn't have any other way to vent their douche nozzlery at the
Yeah,
time.
it's probably a lot harder to find groups that you could really chill and vibe with back when there wasn't other many people on the internet you can play with. I feel like tabletop in general has had such a surgence over the last like 3 or 4 years because so many people have resulted to being on the internet. There's like a million D&D streams, and there's I feel like indie games are really taking off even more and more. Like, I picture brain a while back about City of Mist, and I ran that out of nowhere, and I didn't even know it existed until I looked for a superhero game. I was like, oh, this works. This is cool. So I feel like
Yep,
there's just so much more content out there like at our fingertips, and it helps so much with that.
definitely a chicken for every pot, such as it is. Yep.
Yeah, you can pretty much play if D&D is not broad enough for you, there's a system for like any type of setting. So it really helps.
Literally anything.
Yeah,
Literally anything. And on
it's
the off chance you find something that there's not one, use the cipher system, and then now you have a system for that thing. So yeah.
yeah, they even have like the general system like Cypher and Fate. Like I've been playing with Fate a lot lately. I just found out about that. I was like, this is literally can be anything. This can be used for any set of any setting anywhere, and you can run with it. It's crazy.
Powered by the Apocalypse is super flexible. Similarly, yep.
Yep, I'm trying to focus to finish a Powered by Apocalypse game with my friend that we're creating. So it's so flexible and so easy to even like map stuff out with the base system of it. It's insane. So like I kind of default to trying to run Powered by Apocalypse games when I don't have a lot of time for prep because they're all the same at the end of the day. They're not hard to just pick up and be like, okay, this is the gist. I can think of some cool quick NPCs and run with this and no deal.
I just did a Godslayer thing on the Transplaner channel that Connie Chang has created, and that's based on Powered by the Apocalypse, and that was a lot of fun to do. That was a hell of a game.
How did you like that system? I bought it. I am ready to run it on my channel the moment it drops. But I am excited for it. It looks so dope.
Godkiller in particular?
Yeah, Godkiller in particular.
Oh, it was great. I'm very accustomed to running one-on-one games because that was actually how I got started with that same hipster. Sometimes he'd run games for me and I'd run games for him. So when people weren't really accustomed to that during the pandemic, I did a whole season of a show called One-on-One Shots where I brought in, it was sort of a combination interview and game where we just like talk a little bit and then I kind of run them through either D&D or Vampire. So I'm very used to that. The nuts and bolts of how to get things across was really great because it was more narratively driven than chaos driven or randomness driven. Right? There's definitely a randomness component with the dice, but it is more about what's the story you're trying to tell, and even when things go poorly, it still advances the narrative, and that's something I like quite a bit.
Yeah, that's something I really like about Powered by Apocalypse games in general. It's not like, oh, you failed, you're kind of fucked. It's like you fell forward in such a way that the narrative kind of keeps going, which is really nice. And from what I saw, I'm so behind on the God Killer one-shot series Connie's doing right now, but from what I saw from Connie and C's one-shot that they did the first episode, it was so narrative rich, 30 minutes in. I'm like, damn, like this is so fun.
Yeah, definitely a cool thing.
Yeah, because you had who was on? Was it Gina, right?
Miss Gina Darling, and we did like I would say a dark mythology type thing, but all mythology is already pretty dark if you're paying attention. So yeah,
mythology is. There's a reason. There's a reason I go by Pluto Slayer, and mythology is so deep and so much stuff to dive into. It's so fun to play with.
I love mythology too. Yeah.
Yep. Well, she was a bastard child of Hades, so it goes some interesting places. I won't say anything other than that for anybody who hasn't had a chance to see it. But that was one of my favorite things I've done recently. I've actually just thrown that one on in the background and listened to it a few times since we did it.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get better at doing, trying to listen to stuff in the background. I feel like I'm always doing something. I never have time to catch up on APs. There's so many APs that I want to watch and not enough hours in the day anymore.
The majority of people, that's how they consume this content. They mom watch it. They just have it going on another screen, and then when something happens, they stop and look like, what? And then they go back to what they were doing and just let it play in the background.
I've had so many moments where I hear something, I'm like, wait, I need to rewind like 2 minutes. What the fuck just happened?
That's why I always have to tell people that it's like you can get across some interesting things like looks and glances and stuff like that, but you also have to assume that no one sees it. Like even if they're looking at it, there's so many people on the screen, they may or may not be looking at you, and odds are they're not looking, they're listening. So
even when I have it like centrally on my middle monitor, there's a project up on the left that I'm working on, or there's people I'm talking to on Discord, or I'm on my phone reading at the same time. Like I can't just watch it. So it makes total sense for sure.
Yep, that's the nature of the beast.
No,
Go
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I just know that B.Dave's done a lot of awesome stuff and played a lot of awesome characters. So you probably get this question a lot. But what has been your favorite character that you've ever played? Or maybe top two, because you played a lot of characters.
And I'm going to do the same thing I did to PJ and add on to that. Because I know Baron Temple is probably up there. NPC as well. A favorite NPC as well.
NPC is good.
Yes, the favorite PC would definitely be Baron Victor Temple, because I knew we were. I played Vampire at the beginning. Like, that very much landed on my head in the '90s when I was in high school when that
Mhm.
came out. Like, I was the target market, and it was just like.
Nice.
So getting to, and we knew the point behind LA by Night was to reintroduce 5th edition to the world, and so I knew I was going to get to be the face of Clan Ventru for a new generation, and get to kind of redefine what they were. Because if you're not familiar with it, you have different vampire clans,
Mhm.
and they all do different things, and the Ventru are like the business vampires. And in the past, they were just sort of like sleazy stockbroker types, and I always loved Ventru, and I wanted to show that they could be more than that. And so getting to do that, and accomplishing my goal, that he became, he's in games now, and is, canonical to the mythos, and some of the things that I got to achieve as that character,
Mhm.
was definitely number one. um
That's so cool.
the
I love
the
vampires, so
Yeah, it's the one game I can get her to play.
yeah, I
She
love
was on
that
my
game.
I did a Boston After Dark game, and she was so involved. It somehow turned into a Riverdale crossover with her character, but it
It did,
worked.
but it works.
what hasn't Riverdale crossed over with at this point?
Exactly. So you
That's, yeah,
understand.
completely valid life choice. Yeah. Um, favorite NPC is either Tiamat or Xanathar. I think most people love it when I do the Xanathar. So
Mhm.
I think that's probably
Yeah,
probably number
didn't
one.
you do the one shot with Tiamat where you had like a shit ton of people trying to kill Tiamat? Wasn't that was
16
yeah?
people versus Tiamat.
It's
Yeah,
on my
yeah.
watch list. I need to get to that's insane to run that many people. I've done it once,
If
and it's an experience.
Yep, the most I've ever run is 18, and I don't recommend that. And 16 was right. I just told them in advance. I'm like, look, you're gonna get to do one, maybe two things. So don't hold
Mhm.
back. Don't charge up. Don't cast your buffs. Like, come out and do a thing, because just the logistics of this is like, that's probably gonna be the only thing you get to do. Yeah. Um.
Yeah, I love vampires in general. So like playing vampire is some I do love playing that game a lot. The Vampire, the Masquerade, like it's so much fun, like just playing that character and all the different like things you can do and
And
everything.
I think you enjoy
What
too because combat comes up and it's over like that. It's not a drawn out thing.
Yeah.
what clan do you like to play?
The clan that I played, which one was it, babe? I'm trying to remember.
With Cheryl, you played Bruja.
Bruja, yes, that's what it was.
You
That
wanted
was
you wanted to be a gang leader, and it made the most sense for you, so you went
yeah,
Bruja.
I really wanted to be like a fun gang leader who is in charge
See,
and tries
see,
to run the
I'm
thing.
obsessed with magic, so I'm a clan Tremere at heart. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Joe's character on LA by Night was my favorite. As much as I loved Baron Temple, like the magic shit always gets me. It's always a thing.
And that is fine. It takes all kinds. It's zone of safety. That all the
Hmm.
different clans exist for a reason. So that something's going to resonate with everybody.
Yeah,
You know.
that's what I love about Vampire. Like the clans are so specific, like
Mm-hmm.
stereotypes in each of them, but there's so many
Mm-hmm.
ways. Like I love when seeing people make different characters under that fold, because like Ventru, it's business people, like they're the leaders. There's so many ways you can take that.
Yeah, I mean, the archetypes are very well laid out, and what I found consistently, is Vampire is the easiest game for new people to get into, because not only is the system relatively low weight, it's the world is very accessible. Like, when
Yeah.
people get into D&D, there's more of what I call filters. Like, there's just stuff
Hmm.
you got to keep track of. You're like, I'm an orc, okay. I'm a paladin. That's cool. I'm in Waterdeep. That's fantasy New York. Okay. Mind flayers are here. What are those? Oh, they eat brains. Okay, that's bad. And you have to like remember all of this stuff before you can get down to like the human element. Whereas Vampire, you're like, no, it's this world. It's City Hall is there. The movie
Yeah.
theater's there. The gas station's there. It's just 30% of the people are monsters, and so are you, and you don't want to be in action. You
That's
know?
what
Hmm.
I love so much about it, like what you said, because I played another game with Pluto and it was offline. It was just for fun with a couple of our friends. And I played like this vampire that was like a Dick Grayson type character from the show Titans, like really badass. He's kind of a player. It was fun. But it's like we were playing it like it was in our city. So how you were saying could relate to everything and really humanize with it, like, and get super connected because you know those spaces and those
Yeah,
areas.
your two friends are new to tabletop in general. Like I'm with a D&D game that's slowly going. That I have a DM PC there to help you guys out. But Vampire's a new system, even for JR. So I was like, okay, let's just put this in Canton. We'll just run with it. Like I mentioned something, you're gonna know what it looks like, where it's at, all that stuff. We can just play.
Well, it's also D&D is an explicit system. You can do what the game says you can do, and you cannot do what the game does not say you can do. Whereas the storyteller system's implicit, where it's like, well, what would you like to do? You know, and then I will tell you what to roll to try. So it's far more conceptual like that, which is good. But a lot of that, it comes down to what you're mentioning systems before, is what the system's designed to do. D&D is an evolution of old tabletop war game systems. It's built for combat first. In other things, it's not as good at. The storyteller system's the exact opposite. It's built to tell a story, and it like gets really wonky really fast when you're fighting, actually. Because that's not what it's built for. So
yeah, it's definitely cool because I like how flexible it is. Like I think by the end of the show we had so many different plot lines for each character that were just so insane and stretched out from each other. We had one who was specifically hunting down like a werewolf infestation. We had Jenny here with her gang problems and gang issues. He actually rolled really fucking good and survived. I was shocked. He was like maxed out to the hell damage wise, but he made it through. And then we had someone else who was just PJ's character was just a crazy Looney Tune Malkavian character.
That was awesome.
And then we had MILF situation with the other character. Let's just leave it at that. A MILF situation. So it was chaotic and I loved it because it's just like that system doesn't really have things that you can't do if you play it right. So
yeah.
I think each system definitely has its ups and downs for what kind of game you want to run. Like that's why I've made it my goal this year not to run any game twice this year. I want to explore all these different systems because there's so many cool games out there. And if I know I'll run it, people will play because whenever I want to play, it's harder to find a DM than it is the opposite way. And I like to dive into rule books. So yeah, I run 2 games.
Flabbergasted system's pretty fun too. We played a game with that.
What system?
Flabbergasted one.
Yeah, that one is brand new. It just
I never even heard of
it's a comedy like roaring 20s RP game.
Like think like Bridgerton and like kind of like that.
Yeah, you play one of 4. You play like a noble person, a business person, a servant, or what was the other one? We didn't have anyone play the 4th one. I don't remember. But it's just like you build a social club. And it's all about advancing your group's social stand-in and doing it, but it's in a comedic filter, so it's really RP heavy.
Yeah, it is.
Have you tried Good Society, the Jane Austen game?
It's been on my list since Faye and Flowers.
Your jam, Jenny. Yeah, right.
Yeah, she loves Regency stuff. I was like, yeah, that immediately plots like I know D20 mixed D&D with some system. I need to find it because that would probably be perfect for you. And I looked that up and got Good Society. But also, she doesn't love horror and Cthulhu, but I want to run Regency Cthulhu for her because it'd be hilarious.
That would be fun, actually. I like some horror. It depends. I'm more into slasher films and slasher stuff than I am like paranormal horror, but.
Oh, there's plenty of things you can get slashed up by in Call of Cthulhu, so yeah.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu, you don't expect to make it out, at least if alive, not sane. So
yeah, you either expect not to win or to win at a cost in general. Yes, that is true in that game.
Yeah,
nice.
It's already on my list for this year to have a game. I have a game planned for it at some point this year.
Because I know, Jenny, you said before we started recording that one of the things you like most is the role playing and the story aspect. Have you played 10 Candles yet?
No, I haven't even heard of that.
So 10 Candles, I think you would probably enjoy, because in every game of 10 Candles, you know that everyone at the table is going to die. None of you are going to survive this story.
Oh, wow.
And so the story, it becomes more about how are you going to struggle and how are you going to tell this story and how are you going to die?
Oh,
and
cool.
and it sort of removes a lot of the barriers that would be in place otherwise of some of the decisions you'll make and risks you'll take when basically you know that like this is a one-way trip type thing, and it is incredibly heavy role playing. There's a very limited chance component. And that kind of helps determine things like, the order in which you die type thing, down to the last person standing. But it is 95% narrative and,
Ooh, I would love
5%,
that.
5% crunch. Yeah.
Yeah,
That sounds cool too, because it kind of reminds me of like, not exactly like it, but kind of like those movies like On the Nile, that one movie, or like Clue, like a Clue type game. That's kind of cool. Except everybody dies in this one. So
Yeah. Except everybody dies.
except everybody dies, not just
Yeah.
a few people.
Yeah, I
but
have
it's
I have,
literally never the same twice. That is one of the advantages of Tin
Oh,
Candles.
that's cool.
Literally never the
yeah,
same
I have a
twice.
friend
I have to try
pre-recording. I have a
that.
friend pre-recording a series that they're trying to do a campaign of 10 candles.
Oh,
Which I
really?
don't know how they're gonna do it, but I'll have
You
to
can't.
I'll have to show you the
Just-
videos. She gave me the first, or they gave me the first 2 episodes to watch, but I don't know.
I've had a few people that have tried Tin Candles campaigns. It doesn't lend itself to that. I mean, issuing the disclaimer, anybody can do anything, obviously. But it's sort of like, I think part of the genius is the intensity. That it's like it is fairly self-contained. We're all going to take this ride together, and just the logistics of maybe if you got the humans in the room and they all shot it in one single exhausting day, maybe. But it's just the time between the sessions. I don't know that you could keep the energy right or get right back where you needed to be to do it, I think. But again, hey, who knows? Another one that is really great is Dread. The Dread. Are you familiar with Dread?
I've heard of it.
No,
I
I'm
haven't been able
not.
to look at it yet, though.
So way back in the day, back in the Geek and Sundry days, they did 2 seasons of a show that was based around Dread. Now that you could do longer form. So what it is you have a Jenga tower. They don't call it Jenga. It's legally distinct wooden blocks. It's freaking Jenga. And you're telling the story, and when you want to do something, you have to make a pull from the Jenga tower.
Oh,
And
that's
so
cool.
as the game progresses, things get increasingly precarious because it's Jenga.
Yeah.
Legally distinct Jenga. And when the tower falls, your character dies.
Oh, wow.
And what ends up happening, though, is I have never had a more ingenious tool for tension than that, of just how quickly you can hear a pin drop in the room. Because what ends up happening is you're not just thinking of, oh, what pull can I make that I'm going to be all right? You're trying to think 3 or 4 steps ahead because you don't want to screw the next person either. So you're like 8-dimensional Jenga you're trying to play here while the storyteller is like edging you on.
Ooh, that's intense.
Definitely changes the mindset, because when you play Jenga, that's the whole point, to make it fall over on the next person's turn. You have to think, okay, how do I do this safe now? Like, what's the
I like that. That sounds fun.
While trying to tell this story at the same time.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's wild.
And like, I'm going to have to check that out, because like I actually have seen some things a long time ago. I used to live in LA, and my roommate Lance, he loved Geek and Sundry, so we watched a lot of the stuff together. But I want to check that out, because that sounds interesting, and it sounds like it'd be fun to like be in a game like that.
It is wild. Yeah, wild.
Yeah, I
want to talk about going through a ringer, both Tin Candles and Dread.
Yeah. I definitely want to run one of those when I eventually get an in-person game going. So all my friends that play are online, so it's been streams and Zoom games and all this kind of stuff since COVID. First game I run in person is going to be a horror game, because that's the perfect setting for it. It's the perfect. I've done Monster of the Week, because Monster of the Week you can do online, but it's a different animal.
Run freaking Dread. You want an instant, immediate buy-in. It gets so real, so fast. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll play in it.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it with just 2 players even. Like, I mean, it's a lot. It would be harder to do 2 players, of course, because the tower's gonna fall and one of you is gonna die, but it's still doable. Yeah. All you need is legally distinct wooden blocks, and you can play Dread.
Yeah, I think our Jenga tower still has all the drinking game rules written on the pieces, but we can make it work. We could just combine the 2 games, make it even more interesting.
There you go.
Do it on hard mode. Exactly.
Yeah, because then once we're all drunk, it'll be even harder not to knock the tower over and die. It'll make even more tension, build it up. So,
Yep, that's
But yeah,
true.
speaking of horror and stuff, like you've run a lot of different stuff. You've played in a lot of different games. Is there a like genre that you like tend to gravitate towards that you feel like it's the most fun to run or the most fun to play for you?
I'm going to tell you two things, and I'm not going to try and out anybody. But not only is horror not my jam, most of the people that are very well known in this space for horror, it's not their jam either. It's like the people that just happen to be good at it don't necessarily enjoy consuming that content. Um, for me, I like higher stakes, higher power things. Like
Mhm.
I like, you know, Avengers Endgame
Ooh,
rather
yeah.
than the Punisher, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the Punisher fine, but you know, the fate of the world is hanging in the balance of what's about to happen. That's why I
Mhm.
made level 20 D&D my niche, because when I first got started doing this, fewer than 5% of campaigns had level 20 characters in them. And that's not campaigns that just went from level 1 to level 20, that just, even if they started there, were one shots or started at 17 or whatever, just it was a thing nobody did. Because there's still this common misconception that the game is so lethal at 20. And that's actually not true. The game is the hardest at level 1 through 3, when a goblin can crit with an axe and take your head off, and you got
Mhm.
no healing magic, no resurrection magic. It's just like you roll poorly, took an arrow in the neck, sucks, because you've got 4 hit points. Whereas like later in the game, it's rocket tag. I mean, you're literally a god and can do anything, especially if you're like a wizard and you have access to wish and time stop. But there's other gods that also can do those things,
Mhm.
and they're like, come at me. So that's the thing I like the most. Even in Vampire, I like the larger scale conflicts. You know, the fate of the city is in the balance. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
is this area going to fall to the Sabbat or the Inquisition or the
Mhm.
Camarilla, or you know, whoever the adversaries are. That's the kind of stuff I like. High stakes, high
Yeah,
drama.
high stakes are always
Yeah,
fun.
that's good stuff.
I've run maybe I'm gonna say 2 level 20 games, and they're not as bad as people think they are. It's really not that hard to balance for. Just look at your characters, what they can do, and throw stuff at them that they can't do, and then watch them try to juggle that in a way where they have to think creatively around it. And like usually by the time you get to that last battle, they're gonna burn through most of their stuff, and they're not gonna have like a million different spells or abilities to throw at this villain or whatever you have going on. I
Yep.
hate running under level 5. I honestly do not like doing it anymore. It's not, I love to have everyone have more abilities so that I, as a GM, can also throw more stuff at them.
Something I've never understood. I don't know if it's still a thing, but back in the day, Pathfinder E7 was a
Mhm.
big deal, which was Pathfinder games that only went to level 7. And I was like, for what? Just, you
Right.
know, like, I cannot think of a more futile thing to be like, let's play this game at the hardest, lamest part and then start over again. Like, what?
Yeah,
But, you know,
Right.
that does not
again,
sound fun to me at
to each
all.
their own, though. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, man, if that's your jam, it's only
Yeah.
safety. You know,
Anymore, if if
Yeah.
I do like campaigns, we're starting at level 5 and moving up. If it's a one shot, I won't start below like level 8. Like I want people to be able to have like some of their first like couple class features, have good spells, have abilities that they can play with and be excited about. So that when I crush them with monsters that they have to actually like, okay, wait, okay, maybe I'm not as powerful. We need to see what we can do creatively to get around this and not just power game our way through it now like we thought we were going to do.
I will say, as long as you're playing with experienced people, you know what I mean, that
Yeah.
that kind of have their head around what the classes can do. Because otherwise, it is valuable to start them at the beginning, where they kind of get the feel for what this character's about, you know, what they're capable of, that kind of stuff.
Mm.
But once you kind of have some people that know, it's like, okay, I know what rage is, I know what flurry of blows is, I know what smite is. You know what I mean? Like, let's,
Yeah,
you know
I've
what
I've
I
gotten to the
mean?
point that where most of the
Yeah.
people I play with know what they're doing and play a lot of tabletop games in general. So I usually don't have to worry about that anymore.
Besides me, I'm new, B.
You did good.
It's
You did
but you,
fine. I gave
you're
you
doing great, honey.
your last D&D
Yeah.
character was like one of the main people in the D&D like Game of Thrones deadly style game we ran. I ran a game with no resurrection magic for the whole
Oh,
campaign, and
that's just because
you went
I always
insane with it.
I never pick the I always want to do the characters with all the magic and all the spells, but I that's too much for me. So I always pick the ones that just like hey, I'm fighting, I'm punching. The punch barbarians are brutal characters.
Yeah, spells can be a lot, and I'm insane in multi-class every character I play with, so I have spells. So
Well, I mean, my main freely was a bard, paladin, warlock, sorcerer, so I get it. But Jenny, have you played a paladin?
I haven't yet,
you
actually.
you did actually.
When?
First stream we did, you were a fighter, but I gave you just sadly 2 paladin levels,
that
so
my
every
cobalt
once
character?
in a
Smite.
while you could pop off.
Oh, that was
So-
my cobalt. Yes.
Here's the reason why I suggest a paladin, because you get some spells and you can do some stuff, but if you don't feel like casting spells, you just convert it into hitting harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it. Where you're like, well, I could heal, or I could just hit this dude. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then
Right.
you can smite away. So
And
it's
you
kind
make
of
it
like
you
you
make
got
it really
options.
wild. You just hold out till you get holy weapon, and then you just fucking go insane with smites, because then it's just crap
That's
ton of
it.
dice.
Like
Mhm.
my one friend we play with in game, like she's completely new to D&D like I am, and she chose to pick a character with the most magical spells, and she's always trying to look at her sheet like, what do I do next? What
She
do I do
chose to
next?
play a full necromancer.
Yes, and she's brand new.
I had to respec her spell. I was like, okay, you're not gonna get a couple spell slots, and you can just have these skeletons that pop out when you go to battle. So you don't have to think of the logistics of having a small army with you in your first time playing TNT.
It's very kind of you. Very kind. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave her skeletons. She just has 2 of them, and a scale based on what she could potentially summon that I just give her the stats of. It makes
You
it so
know,
much easier.
I have yet to. I've played with some very gifted people that were playing necromancers, and I find it doesn't scale. Like the undead they can summon is never good enough relative to the things they're fighting at the time. It's always like, I got my 6 skeletons, and it's like breath weapon. No, you
Yep.
don't.
Their
Yeah.
health does not scale too much. They still are like in the 20 and 30 range at most, and their bump they get like a slight bump in their attack. But honestly, all it is you can just summon more. And that's good to a point until you throw a fireball at the group of skeletons, and then they're just kind of like, well,
it's like
fuck.
that is a nice army of skeletons you got there. It'd be a real shame if something were to happen to it. Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yep, it's always
sorry,
my
the gardeners are right outside here, so
no worries.
That's not a
No, you're
chainsaw,
good.
man.
No
Yeah.
worries. Yeah, that's
Or if
always
it is
been
a
my
chainsaw
go-to.
guy, it's about to go down here, you know, and you'll get it live captured.
Yeah, that'll
I
be awesome.
got one where I don't know if you can see my bow's over there in the corner, just in case. You know what I mean? I'm always ready. Anybody wants to do it.
You're a big dude. I
ready
think
to
I
go.
think you would have a chance.
The swords and all the other stuff are over there. I need a little more warning to go get.
You just
like,
gotta get up and kick the chair in his direction, so you have a second to dive across the room.
You know, I think about that sort of thing, but it's like I have weapons strategically stashed around here, you know. But thunder and lightning are always with
Yeah,
me.
I have too many collectibles on
You're
my
good to
desk. If
go.
I had to if I had to roll away real quick, I would just hit my desk and knock everything over, and it would just be a mess, and I'd die.
Oh, I have to ask, because you were talking about that, kind of ties into it. Like you were saying before the stream about LARPing. Like, so you've LARPed before then, B.Dave?
Oh yeah. In fact, back in the early vampire days, that was one of the main ways that I played it, because both
so
when
cool.
when the tabletop game came out, the Mind's Eye Theater stuff came out right afterwards, and you know, of course, on a college campus, you know, come on.
That's awesome.
You know, you were saying that you don't like a lot of the crunch of the games, and so LARPs always pare that way down because they have to.
Yeah.
So different ones have different systems. It'll be like rock, paper, scissors, or if there's if they have different kinds of names for like the referees or whatever, because the story is kind of emergent. So you know, they might roll like a die or have like a deck of cards or something like that.
That's
But
so
otherwise,
cool.
yeah.
And you get to do it like you're yourself, you know, like run around, and like I've seen some stuff. That's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you feel like you're in that world.
There's some of them where they actually like have foam weapons and stuff and really fight, and it's like, you know, if you get touched, well, you've been damaged, you know. And it's like, and there's sort of an agreement that it's like, well, you get touched 3 times, you're out of the fight or whatever. They're not all like that, of course. But it's yeah, that is also a very fun way to do it. In fact, some of the vampire LARPs back in the day, and sometimes even still, one of the rules, so one of the core concepts of Vampire the Masquerade, for people who aren't familiar, is that you keep the fact that vampires are real a secret. That's the masquerade.
Yeah.
because the world of darkness is this world right now. And so you have to ask, like, well, why don't we know about vampires? Why don't we know about werewolves? Why don't we know about mages, changelings, and wraiths? And each of those games has a reason why the common person doesn't know this is really happening. So in the OG Vampire LARPs, one of the rules was they'd go and they'd play at like bars in public areas. And it's like, if somebody figures out we're playing a game, you're out. You've breached the masquerade. So they would have to do the game in a bar surrounded by people in a way that just blended right in. And I think that would be dope.
Oh, that's
That'd be
awesome.
so
The
fun.
immersion of
I would
that.
love to do something like that.
I'm sure it's still going down like that in some places. Because realistically, how would we know if they're doing a good job?
Yeah, whenever we visit LA, I'm gonna get all my tabletop friends together and some of your friends, and we're gonna do this.
that being said, though, I know a lot of the hand gestures, though. So I mean, if somebody's over there like this, I'm gonna be like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
You don't count though. You're Victor Temple. It doesn't count
Right.
if you find out. It
That is
does.
true.
It's by default. You already know about the
But
masquerade.
it's my job to enforce the masquerades and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing, you casuals? You're gonna ruin this for everybody.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, that sounds so fun. Because I love vampire stuff, and just a real life game like that sounds so cool.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just as many kinds of LARPs as there are every other kind of tabletop, and then there's some where they just get together for an evening. There's some where they do it all day. There's some where they come out and go camping, and it's just like full immersion. Yeah, it's definitely dope. There's almost certainly something in your area if you poke around a little bit. Almost certainly.
I'm gonna be like looking around town now when we go out, babe, like, and be like, are they LARPing?
I mean, we even have to just make it back up to Bristol Ren Fair whenever, because I know they had it closed the one year, but I'm pretty sure Jasmine said it's already back up where they have that kind of stuff where you can actually like get swords and weapons and stuff and fight around through your little quest thing they do out throughout the day.
That's cool.
I just picture myself doing that as Paul Rudd from Role Models, just like completely like out of my depth trying to do that. You get like all the regulars who are so into it. I'm like, I got a sword.
It'd be really fun to LARP, and I know you couldn't do this because you can't dress up in the outfits. People would know, but if you could LARP as like the Avengers or something, like go out.
I mean, you could LARP as anything potentially.
Again, you know, there's plenty of LARPs where 100% of the people know exactly what's happening. Like this is what we're here to do. That was just a way they would play Vampire back in the day. It's not the way. It was just a way. Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's really dope though, and it really sticks to the whole point of Vampire is the whole masquerade. So that's just such a great idea to run.
On Disney Plus, on Jeff Goldblum's show that he did, one of the episodes is about LARPing, and PJ is in that episode.
Is he really?
Really?
Dude,
he didn't tell me.
He is. Yep.
I need to watch. I'm gonna poke him about that after this. Now PJ's such a good dude.
He is, yeah. I love PJ.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum came out to their Twin Mask LARP, and a few people I know are in that. Yeah, because he goes out and is like, "Well, what's LARPing and what's it about?" So it's a pretty good introduction. And they of course were all freaking out that Jeff Goldblum came to their LARP, and then, yeah,
they were like,
that was. Oh man, I guess that had to be pre-pandemic. Time is a flat circle now. I've lost all track of like
times. When I think that I've only been playing for like 3 or 4 years, it's like that can't be true because I feel like it's been a decade at least at this point because it just feels like it's so baked in.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, B.Dave.
No. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was telling Pluto the other day, I was like, because I was thinking about it, I was like, oh yeah, I've been back from LA for like 3 years now. I'm like, oh no, it's been almost 6 years. Like time is crazy how fast time has like flown. It's
I mean, I think it because like you do all your TikToks, I play all these games. It's like you said in your Undisputed Academy, I'm going to quote your things. I watched a shit ton of it today before this interview to catch up. Elicited emotions actually feel real and like the real world outside your character. Like that, those memories feel real as shit. And I think that doesn't help with all of us who's dived into this the last. I feel like we've lived so many more years than we have.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true to to give the full context to what I was talking about, because you're completely correct, but for people that don't know what I was talking about, I was saying that two things. The purpose of the storyteller is to elicit an emotional reaction. That's the only thing you have to do as the storyteller. If the people at the table are nodding their head yes, or shaking their head no, or laughing, or crying, or terrified, or whatever, like, you are succeeding. Your only enemy is meh, you know, especially if they're like, and you're within your rights to ban phones from the table. And the beauty of this pastime in particular, is your brain does not know the difference between something that is real and something that is vividly imagined. I mean, not to be too graphic, but you know, if you vividly fantasize about something, your body responds to it because it literally doesn't know it isn't real. So in every way that counts, you really did slay that dragon with your friends. You really did save the kingdom, or you really did take over the world, or whatever. As you think back fondly on that, those memories in your mind are just as real as playing Little League in high school. So that's why you can think back on these things and laugh about it so much at the time that, you know, you shot down that dragon 10, 15 years ago. Like, I remember things that, you know, happened many years ago, you know, because, you know, it's still lodged in there as real. And that's the beauty of this, in a way that other art forms can't quite elicit. I mean, of course, music, movies, they can trigger emotions, of course, but not the deep experiential aspect of it. The tabletop can.
Yeah, that's how I feel like too, like when I'm playing tabletop, or also like when I'm acting, it's like I get so into my character that sometimes I forget. I'm like, wow, I didn't actually do this. Like, this isn't actually like something I did, because, you know, to act, you have to like be in that character mode and become your character. So you feel like you actually lived through that. And it's a crazy feeling.
Yep. But it could also be cathartic and healing too. Like when I had my Patreon, I ran 35 to 40 games a month for 18 months on Patreon, which was a lot, and I don't recommend it. But you know, most of that was vampires, about 75% vampire, about 25% D&D. And what I found is your first vampire character is what you think is your idealized self, but is actually really you. The real you will come leaking out constantly out of your first, actually out of your first few characters, especially as you look back, when you notice certain patterns of character traits that come up again and again and again. It's because those things are you. And then once you know that, then you can either lean into it or steer away from it or do whatever. And I had so many people that you know, overcame phobias, got over traumas, got over being shy, came out of the closet, just realized things about themselves once the act of putting on that mask allowed them to tell the truth. So
yeah, we talked about it in the past episode with my friend Bree, but yeah, me being both non-binary and bisexual, like, I've played through that, all those emotions. I've played through all of that to figure it out over the years, because like, I feel like everyone puts an aspect of themselves in their characters, and it's just something like, oh, let's explore this specific thing and turn it up and then see what that character looks like at the end of the day. So like, all those characters are going to have a lot of trends. So it definitely makes sense for sure.
You know, you mentioned Marseille the Typhoon. So the first role I got in this space that was significant was when I played Chateau on We're Alive Frontier, who was the exiled leader of an unruly band of misfits who wouldn't listen to reason to their detriment. After that came along Victor, and I was like, well, Chateau was just sort of this like anguished, tortured person. And even though angst is a big part of vampire, I was like, well, what kind of vampire would be having a good time with this? A nightclub promoter. That's why Victor was a nightclub promoter. I was like, this is great. You know, what do you mean? Like, I can work nights for eternity? So that was the concept there. And then when he became Baron, he became the exiled leader of an unruly band of misfits that wouldn't listen to reason to their detriment. So then the opportunity to play freely came along, and I was like, all right, I've had 2 leader characters. I don't want to do another leader. And I joined an existing show, and I was like, what do you guys need? And they were like, we need a face. We need somebody to do the talking. And I was like, geez. So Freely still ended up being charisma based because I wanted to play that bard, paladin, warlock, sorcerer as a thought experiment, basically, because I knew I wanted to do that because they were all charisma based, and so many people told me it wouldn't work, and I was like, I really think it will. And so at first it was just to prove a point, and Victor is such a morally gray character that I wanted Freely to just be an absolute good.
Yeah.
And the reason why Freely is a halfling is because Victor is me. I'm 6'9", so he's little, I'm big. Freely is everything Victor's not, and he is just good. So then, right after that, Marseille the Typhoon comes along, and I made him to be not Freely. That's why he's a bugbear. He's huge. Freely is this genuine heroic person. Marseille's none of those things. He kills people for money. But Marseille was lawful neutral. Like, he did not care, you know?
Right.
And it was around the time of Freely that I started realizing the trends in these characters were me coming through, which kind of opened the door to be able to do something else, which is kind of why Marseille is the grumpy asshole that he is. And I'll tell you 2 stories about that show. When we were doing that, it was very early in the pandemic. It was like the first thing we did in the pandemic. It was one of the first remote shoots. And the story opens, and my character is with the bad guys. Brennan did not discuss that with me. He's just like, I'm Darth Vader the Emperor. I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. And then Carlos's character comes in, and he's like, hey, kill that kid. Again, we didn't talk about this. I'm just like, all right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I was like,
100% thought Carlos was going to die for a couple of moments there. I was like, I was B.Dave about to kill a kid on screen.
I was like,
it's probably not going to happen because this is the vibe of this world, like the dimension, like the high school, or what's the right name for it? The Fantasy High world.
Fantasy High.
But I was like, I don't know, man, maybe.
I'm just saying, everything you saw play out in real time played out in real time. So I was like,
that's awesome. You were like, wait.
Okay, all right, hunter's mark. Yeah. Yeah, I will find him, no problem. Yeah, I was like, something's gonna happen and be all right. But, well,
yeah. And that was one of the moments too where like the group wasn't like very established. It was very like hodgepodge how you guys ended, especially with 6 episodes, how you guys ended up as a group with you and Myrtle the sea bitch and all the craziness of everybody else's characters. It was a lot.
The one pre-existing relationship is Brie and I agreed on that, like, we were kind of an item, which is like Brie and I were an item in multiple streams, but like that was the one thing we knew. It was like, you and I kind of have a thing, which part of the irony of that is she lived in the ocean and Marseille was afraid of water. That was part of his character. So but the even the conflict in almost the hypocrisy in his own mind of literally falling in love with someone who lives in a place that he's terrified to go, you know, and it's like, there was layers to that character. I enjoyed that a lot.
This is why I love
Those are the best stories,
this is why I love when GMs are at my table, because their characters are so rich, like their backstory, they give you so much to play off because they know that that's what they want when they GM, because it makes it so much easier to tie those characters into the plot and find threads to mess with. So like it's so much fun having a table of GMs like that.
Or they show up and they're like, I'm a sentient ham sandwich being carried around by a mage hand.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever.
Or
like,
both. Or both. Maybe the sandwich is the bat story.
Porque no los dos. Exactly. That is true.
It's the revenge, because we deal with chaotic players all the time. So when we play, let's be like, okay, let's make the most broken gremlin I can think of to get revenge for all the stuff that I have. Like you said, you had a 4-class, multi-class. Like my 3rd character I played after DMing for a while was a Tempest Cleric, Storm Sorcerer with a couple levels of Fighter and a couple levels of Paladin. And they were my most broken character I ever played in my life. Dealing out 270 damage in turn 1 with 3 Channel Divinities. It's insane.
Add a little sneak attack, a little green flame blade in there. Yeah, like that's
that West March let us have an item based on level. So if I had a legendary item, I had that Blood Fury tattoo by the end. So I was just running around booming blade stuff while I would throw call lightnings everywhere. It was literally so much fun, but I barely took any damage or got hit at all because it was just crazy.
I had the opposite with Freely. He was a glass cannon, and I was very hard to hit because I had a very high AC and I had very good saves, but I had the least hit points of literally everyone in the group. Like my boy was so fragile, so it's like he just had to not get hit. That was all, you know. But it's like most stuff is gonna be dead before it can swing at me.
Yeah,
so
I don't know how I got away
GG.
with most of my stuff. I had such a high AC. I had shield to bump it to 30, but then on top of that, I'm a cleric, so I can just heal myself, and the Blood Fury tattoo also heals you on a hit. So it was just like, I don't know how this got approved, but I am going to enjoy every second of this because this is
Let's
insane.
do it until it gets undone. Absolutely.
Yep. Oh man.
Well, what's so fun about? Oh, go ahead.
No,
Sorry, Pluto.
no, you go.
Oh, I was to say what's so fun though about like tabletop games and like acting and everything for me is like, and you guys will probably agree, like the creativity of it. Like you get to be anybody you want to be, create like any character, like even if it's like the most crazy thing ever, you know, that people may not think of. It's like you get to unleash that like fun, creative side, and it's just the best feeling ever. I feel like.
Yeah, of course. And there's no wrong way to do it. I think that's the kind of the thing that I have to explain the most, especially to new people. They're so afraid of making mistakes, and it's like, well, you can't. You know, you just
that's me with tabletop. I'm always afraid that in
You
my
don't win at tabletop. You just play your character, tell a
can't,
story, and however it ends, that's how it was supposed to go. That's at the end of the day.
Yep. You know, and if you make a character and it's not quite what you like, you know, talk to your storyteller. A lot of times they'll let you switch something up. It's fine, or even switch to a new character. That's cool, and then just keep rolling. Yeah, just have a good time.
She did that in her first game. Actually, she played a bard that was just herself because she's a singer. She's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna be myself, play a bard, do all stuff," and then she got bored and ended up switching to a zened out hippie Tabaxi barbarian instead.
But like I love what B.Dave said, and like I was just thinking about that when you said that about the character I played. So I did play a bard that, like, I guess you could say was like myself, but I didn't play that character. I stopped playing it. And then what you said about how like all our first characters are kind of like us, that's so true. Because then I played a character that I didn't even think was like me, and it turned up being so much like me. And like it also made me discover like a part about myself, you know. So it's like it's interesting how that works.
Yep. I've pointed this out to so many people, and every once in a while somebody's like, my first character wasn't like me, and I'm like, okay, dude. You know, like, yeah, right, yeah. And like, I'm not a kleptomaniac. I'm like,
Yep. Every character you look back on
at
it.
At least you've thought about it, dude. Yeah,
yep.
You know,
Every character comes back to it at the end of the day. You're gonna see parts of yourself in there. Like I played a barbarian fighter that ended up being good at accounting, so my day job slipped into my character somehow. I was like, I don't know why the fuck I'm keeping track of money in a game now too. Like, what the hell?
and to be clear, there's nothing wrong with this. In fact, you can learn a lot about yourself when you're like, oh, I keep hitting these notes. You know.
Yeah.
You know,
I always default back to smart ass spell swords, and that's just my thing at this point.
Well, you know, like, and then sometimes people are conscious of it. Like I played with somebody once who they were in a relationship with my character, and we were talking about whether or not their parents approved or whatever, and we were just working out the backstory. And they were like, oh, but I need my dad to be like a good dad. And I was like, really? Why? And they were like, because my real dad isn't. And I was like, point taken. So now in every story I tell, unless they tell me they have bad parents, I always make parents cool. I always make mothers and fathers loving and supportive.
That's fair.
That's awesome.
Because unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that. And
that
was the experience.
I know so many people in the space who don't have that. So that tracks big time.
I had an experience in again one of those Patreon vampire games, and it ended up being like a time travel game. Like somebody had to go back in the past and essentially ask their father a question. It was like where he buried something. I don't even know why we had to go back. But he sees his dad, and his dad says, you know, I'm proud of you, and hugged him. And afterwards, he wrote me this long message about how emotional that made him because his father had never done that. And I was like, well, there you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's awesome to experience that beautiful moment, though. Like playing that character, that you gave them that moment. Because, that's how a lot of parents can be, you know, unfortunately. So it's nice that they had that with you.
Yep. You know, so it's, that Definitely a formative moment for me in my storytelling. That it's like I'm gonna hand these experiences out as often as I can.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as much as I love GMing, just because I can't stop learning new systems, it's also just like I like getting my players invested in such a way they leave the table and they're like, oof. Like she was not super invested in the first D&D campaign we did on my channel until
What
I did a
you did to
scene
me was
where
horrible.
she made up with her dad right before the tournament where I killed almost all the nobles, including her dad. And for the rest of
Yes.
the campaign, she just had so much righteous fury for her
Yes, I was
character.
playing this like character named Thomas. He was kind of like that pretentious, rich character, kind of like from an elitist family, and he had a lot of trouble with his one dad. So Pluto gave him like this amazing moment where they finally like made up and were so happy. And then the next day after he won the jousting tournament, Thomas, his whole family dies. Like they get
Yeah.
I
slaughtered.
think I didn't
Yeah.
I have you roll. I think I also had you like look up to the crowd and make eye contact with him right
Yes,
before I
'cause you're
pulled the
evil.
trigger.
Oh, you've got to know Dad is going in the ground when that happens. It like, especially if it's like, I mean, it's
Oh,
Yes.
you just randomly made up
you've
before a big
you've
deadly
got to
tournament's
know.
coming up,
Yeah,
like.
like this is a
But
one-way trip. Yeah.
Plus,
I
she
bet
gave me
you
like
don't
she
watch
gave
them.
me
It's so
like six
sad.
siblings, two dads, and a staff. I'm like, maybe half of them are gonna live through this. What I know is coming, and I think
Yeah.
I had her roll for everybody else except for him, and she
Mhm.
saved her other dad and her sister, and that was it. So
But
it
it
was
worked. I
insane.
got so invested in that character because then there was, you create the character and right away it's like there, like PJ was talking about this too. Like, once you have the stakes of like wanting the character to accomplish something, like avenge his
Mhm.
family, then you
Mhm.
become the character, you get into it. And like I just wanted so badly, like to avenge my
I,
family.
I will say I'd be remiss if I didn't point this out to the storytellers in the audience. Make sure you get consent before you do that sort of thing. Because I was in a game. I actually was not running this game. I was playing the game where somebody had two dads and one of the dads was going to die because this was the part in the narrative where, of course, the dad was going to die. All the foreshadowing is pointing towards, it's like he's going to hold them off while we run,
Yeah.
and the player just couldn't accept it, and they were very, very, very upset about it. I had another one
Wow.
where somebody's grandfather was going to die, and my character had the ability to capture souls, and I was going to capture his soul when he died.
I
And
just
again,
heard
the
I
part
just
like,
heard about that today on your one of your one of your class academy
yeah,
things.
the human, not the character, the human freaked out. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was like, clearly we have tripped a chord about something
Right.
else in their life that that is
Yep.
transcends what's happening at the table. So it's just
Yeah, that's why I always
make
have the
sure everybody's
safety.
all
I
right
always
with
have the
that.
safety forms before I run a game. But then also, I'm like, when they
Mm-hmm.
give me the bachelor, I'm like, okay, is there anything in here I can't touch?
Yep.
Because otherwise, I'm gonna mess with it. My
Yeah,
one
that's
friend gave me complete autonomy over his character, and I have him in an identity crisis now because he's playing an android, and in my world, they don't when they can be reincarnated by just like memory wiping themselves. And his
Yep.
new life isn't what he thinks because I had someone slip in a memory like thing over top his new memory. So
Same thing. I'm always like, do literally whatever. Like I don't do whatever. I don't mind. But again, there's no wrong answer about this thing. And a lot of times the person doesn't know what's going to bother them until the moment. So sometimes you'll see in streams, like actually this came up in the Godslayer when like there was a moment and I was just like, a lot of times I'll just be like, do you consent to something heavy? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I'm not gonna spoil it. You know what I mean? But it's like, we're about to take a hard turn here. It's like, are you okay with that? And
Yeah.
if the person isn't, you still got to respect that. Because I've also seen people come across phobias and things in these stories that they didn't know they had. Like, I was playing in a game where we were fighting a hag in a D&D story, and they clawed at one of the characters, and the DM described the hag's fingernails breaking off in the wounds.
Oof.
And it just squeaked out one of the people at the table so much, they were like X X X X X X X X X, and then afterwards they were like, I didn't know
Yeah,
That was because it's never come up.
That's such a specific thing.
You know?
And it's definitely gross. I didn't see how it could get someone unexpectedly.
I made a mistake once. This was for well, I won't say the game, but I was creating a monster on the fly, and I created eyeball spiders, eyeballs that had spider legs, right?
Oof.
And turns out one of the people at the table had arachnophobia and a thing with eyeballs.
Oh no.
So
Which
they're
I
a
didn't
horror
know.
story.
I didn't know. You know what I mean? So they're like, it's a what? You know what I mean? And like I'm like, oh, they're not that. You know, another thing that happened to me, and this wasn't a phobia, but when we were doing the Black Dice Society, when we went to Falkovnia, Falkovnia is this vaguely Eastern European war-torn hellscape, and I very much made it that and leaned in heavy to it. And then months later, they came back to Falkovnia, but when we came back, the war in Ukraine had started. And so then it's like, I have a vaguely Eastern European war-torn hellscape. Great. And I had to be like so careful with how I described every little thing after that.
Yeah,
so yeah,
that was probably rough for sure.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my phobia is like something that people probably say is lame. And I know you laugh at me about this, Pluto, but I have a fear of porcelain dolls. Like if I ever act in a movie, don't want to act in a movie.
She will never be in an Annabelle sequel.
They are empty. They are empty vessels and containers for the devil. That is valid. That is
my
not a lame
mom
phobia.
has
That
my
is
mom has a
nat-
collection. I was like, you better make sure she does not leave them to me in the will.
No.
B.Dave understands. It's the devil's work right there. Those dolls.
Burn them all. No. Right. Yeah. Absolutely not. Nope. I'm with you on that. It's gonna be a no for me.
My only big is cannibalism. The Wrong Turn movie still fucked me up, even thinking about it now. I watched the new season of Dimension 20 Never After, and there was this, like, even with the warnings, I missed the warnings one time, and there was a cannibalistic scene. I was like, okay, I'm gonna fast forward like 5 minutes.
You ever seen The Road?
Not seen The Road.
Oh, I've heard of that actually.
Well, there is definitely a cannibalism component to The Road. So I won't necessarily say I recommend it. What I will say is The Road is the single most accurate portrayal of what the fall of civilization will actually be like. It's not going to be like Book of Eli. It's not going to be like Wall-E. It will be like The Road. Cormac McCarthy wrote that. He wrote No Country for Old Men. I'm like, I don't know if you're okay, dude. Like, someone should check on you that this came out of your mind. But as you're watching it, you're like, yeah, that's what'll happen. Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah, I saw The Road in theaters on Christmas Day the year it came out, and it was just like I'll tell you this one thing about it. It's the type of movie. This isn't a spoiler. You find this out like right at the beginning. The man has because they don't have names. Just the man and the boy, and like everybody is just that. He's got a gun with 2 bullets left, and every time they're in trouble, he puts the gun to his kid's head. Because it's like he would kill him before he let anybody get him and then kill himself. That's the plan. That's the kind of world they have in The Road. And it's
not a very fun world.
No. And yet, as you watch it, you're like, yeah.
I hope if that ever happens, I'm not alive at that time.
Yeah, right. Maybe watch it without him, Jenny. You know what I mean? Or at least I will tell you this though, just in terms of being able to censor the content, the scenes where somebody's going to get eaten is very clearly foreshadowed that you're like, oh no, somebody's about to get eaten. Yeah. And
I can't do it anymore. Like, there's one scene, it's not even a super cannibalistic scene from the Wrong Turn movies, but it's like the end of the movie and the girl runs out like away. She has no eyes. She can't see what she's doing. She's running away, and she gets picked up by a truck, and then it cuts away, and it's them. They have her, and it just drives off. Credits end, and I'm like, that's gonna sit with me for a while, because I know exactly what's happening to her in like the next 10 minutes.
That scene in the Renfield movie, when we saw that, got to you.
Yeah, that was I was not expecting to just chomp a dude's finger off. Like straight
Spoiler
up.
alert.
So I had to look away for a second. Yeah, spoiler alert. Vampire eats people. Spoiler.
Yeah, people probably already do.
But yeah.
Definitely implied.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have like one more question. Then I have a question from my friend that they told me I have to ask you because they want to know.
Nobody's ready.
So first, I got into a little bit today. As I did get to your homebrew stuff on the Undisputed Academy, but like I know, like I like creating my own worlds, and I know like there's only so much you should really dive into with that because if at the end of the day you're not gonna be able to dump a lore doc that's like super long on players.
Sure.
So when you create a new world for a game, like for the one that you did, I forget the name, for your first ever like live stream that you did, your world that you kind of bounced back into.
The Theogony of Kairos.
Yeah,
is
that
the name of that stream. Yeah.
When you do that kind of stuff, how do you get across like the stuff of your world that are significant without a way to just be like, okay, there's all this stuff that I'm going to read through to start off this campaign, as you play like organically.
Yeah, you just tell them right then in the moment something that they would know, that you're like, that's Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
You know that he's the leader of the village. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the temple. That's the temple to the three gods. You know. And then if they're like, which three gods do I? You know, is that something that I worship? And then I'd probably be like, you tell me. And then you give them more. Then you know what I mean? That it's like, here's this thing. This is what you know about this thing. You know.
Okay.
Or I would say something like, that's the temple of the three gods. Do you think you're a religious person?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if they're like, yeah, I'm probably very religious, and you're like, well, then, you know, the three gods are, you know, Bahamut, Tiamat, and Null, you know, and then you give them a little bit more that way. Because yes, I am adamant that nobody cares about your 15,000 years of history, and it is a common rookie mistake that people think that I have to write who beget. What I will say also for that story in particular, the way I opened the story was a flashback where they start and they're not them, they're not themselves. They're aware of who their characters are supposed to be, but as they like look down at their hands and stuff and look at each other, that's not who they are. And they're being chased by a monster and they're running for their lives. And this dragon arrives and saves them. And in exchange for saving them, the dragon eats one of the cows. And that is the beginning of this relationship that they have where the people basically pay tribute to the dragon and it protects them. And then we jump ahead 1,000 years and here's this sprawling civilization built around the strength of the dragon. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's awesome.
And I've gotten it in instantly, just like that. Is make it as experiential as you can. Is the least amount of lore dumps you can give, the better. And when I have to do lore dumps, I almost always do them in the form of flashbacks, where they can see it play out. Like in the Black Dice Society, there's a murder in the very first episode that they don't know what happened, and they find out in episode 30 what happened that night, and they find out as I play it out, and I play it out as the NPCs and everything that is happening and going on real time, rather than just being like, it was the butler in the library with the candlestick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I'm right now working on a Pathfinder game starting next month where it's going to be like a charity campaign. Like every episode's for charity. It's like 20 some episodes. And I'm trying to really dive into the lore for that. But the gist of it is the gods descended to our realm. They're no longer godly power, but they're still immortal beings. So how does it affect the world as these different pantheons kind of settle? And I'm like, I got like 3 or 4 lines for each country, and I'm like, I don't think I need more than that because I mean, the pantheons are already established pantheons. I didn't make my own gods because making gods with 10 countries is insane. But I was like, okay, these gods are present, these ones are missing, these ones are dead in each country. There you go. Gods are starting to go missing. Gods are going to start fighting each other over this soon if it doesn't get resolved. That's the world you're starting in. And then, so it kind of gives me a place to play with it. And I'm trying to just like, I don't know how much more I want to add. Maybe something for like, maybe think of something for while the gods are going to be in one area so I can use them all to kind of like mediate this. But
some people get very anxious if they feel like they haven't figured out everything and they want to plan for every contingency, to which I say you can't. You know,
Mhm.
all you got to know is that's the god of war. He's coming here for this. You know, you know, can the god of war be reasoned with? Yes or no? And then you just go with it at the time and just yes and let it emerge. You know, as they ask their questions, you just give your answers. No, yeah,
Yeah, it makes a lot
no
of
big
sense. So
deal.
yeah, like I'm running a superhero game right now. I made the city very basic. I was like, it's in the future, it's cyberpunk with superpowers. That's like the gist of it.
Hmm.
And just have been just completely going off of what they're doing, like as they've been rolling. I've not planned a single episode. I've just been
Well,
kind of rolling off of what they've done so far, which is really
well,
cool.
you know, and then if you mention to them that, you know, Smitty's weapon shop is on Fifth Street, well, then make a note of the fact that Smitty's weapon shop is on Fifth Street. You know, and now that's a post you've driven into the ground of this world. You know,
Hmm.
it's like is there you know, is there an airport? You're like, yeah, the airport's over on the east side. You know, East Side Airport. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
I literally have
Yeah,
so many
yeah,
Yeah.
notebooks around
yeah.
me when I'm running stuff anymore. I'm like, I'm not going to open another screen and type this out midstream. I'll just have a notebook, take notes as we go, put it all together later.
That's
And
why I use Notepad. It's searchable. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And
fair.
I know this is a little different, but that's what I love about like improv and acting because like when I used to take improv classes, they give you like how you were saying, like one detail, like just one thing, like, oh, your mom will let you go to the party, or just something outrageous, like this cheeseburger's chasing you. And you have to come up with like the whole plot and the story in that scene and kind of play off of each other. And that's kind of how D&D is too, or tabletop in general, because you know, you get your one topic of like what's happening, and the characters kind of like play off of each other.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's all. That's exactly what it is. You know,
That's
yeah.
how
I
that's how I
will
DM
say this.
anymore. One
I will
plot
say
thread.
this also for coming up with NPCs quickly. Which again, another thing that I handle in the 14-day DM course. You know, for another seamless plug there, is just give all of your NPCs an adjective, and you only need one adjective. He's a sneezy halfling,
Yep.
an itchy dwarf, an agoraphobic kobold. Like they will remember that so much clearer than, you know,
Yeah.
barkeep number 774. You
Literally,
know,
last
yeah.
page of my notes from watching your lessons today. Give NPCs one specific quirk.
I love that.
I appreciate you taking
Hey, I
notes.
do
Yeah.
that
Yep,
dance
I'm
too.
trying to. I'm like, I even tried. I was like, I'm gonna watch through as many as I can today. Just try to get through it. And I got to like the first video. I was like, okay, shit, I gotta write some stuff down.
I have a
This
question.
is my notes so far. I got like 6 pages of notes, and I'm like
Nice.
7 days in, I think, on the videos. So
Perfect. Yes, Jenna, you said you had a question.
Yeah, my question is just when you're creating the worlds and the places, like what is your favorite part of that? Like when you're coming up with everything.
You know, it just depends. Because for me, when I think of my stories in every context, it appears in my mind like a movie that I can see and then I describe it.
mhm.
So usually what happens is I'll have just like a scene or a concept, just one thing, you know what I mean? Of
Mhm.
of a certain building, a battle, of what it was like when the dragon saved the people the first time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, then and that's kind of the cornerstone. And then sometimes it just depends on the scale of what I want to do. Sometime I will go online and I will look at maps other people have made for that, like a cyberpunk city map or a fantasy street map or whatever. And of course, don't steal anybody else's work. But you know, that might become an inspiration of being like, ooh, that's
Mhm.
kind of cool, or ooh, I'll kind of fill that in, or oh, I hadn't thought about where do they get their food from, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but
That's
I mean, for me, it's almost like, you know, I guess video games they still do this. It's not as pronounced as it used to be. Is when you had the clip playing that you can only see so far, and then it just sort
Mhm.
yeah.
of like trails off. You know,
Yeah.
it's like there's like a bubble around the players of things, you know, and then
Yeah.
you get out here and that's not things. Like the ocean is somewhere that way and the mountains are somewhere that way, but you're here, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And let me
Right.
tell you what's around you. And when you move, I'll tell you what's around you again.
Yeah.
And a very handy trick too, ask the players, you know,
Yeah.
is like, hey, you come into the you know, you come into the merchant's quarters and it is a buzz of activity. You tell me what it looks like. You know,
Oh, I love that.
you
Yeah.
walk into this room and it's terrible. You tell me what it looks like. Because not only does that take the burden off of you as storyteller, it increases the engagement of the players too.
Ooh, that's a really
Awesome.
good idea because it puts them more into the story.
Mm-hmm.
Envisioning it. I like
Yep.
that.
That works especially well too when if they kill a monster, you tell me what it looks like. If they fail, if they roll a 1 or something, like you tell me what goes wrong. A shockingly high amount of times the players will actually come up with something worse than you were going to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's like
Yeah.
I miss and I fall and I twist my ankle and now I can't walk. Like, dang dog, okay. I was just gonna have your bowstring break, but okay, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, you just made it 10 times worse for
Yeah, what I like to
yourself.
do for nat ones, if they roll a nat one, I have them roll a d4, and if they roll a 1, then I make it worse than probably I was suspected. If they don't, then I'm like, okay, so what happened? You failed. What happened?
Mhm.
And then sometimes they end up thinking up something worse than I thought was what the d4 roll was gonna be. So
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
players
It
like to
can
fuck with their own characters, and it's great.
It can always be worser.
Can.
Worse and then worser.
Right.
Okay, but I got one final question, and my friend told me to ask you because they're curious. You've run
Let's do it.
so many systems, you've played in so many systems. Is there anything out there right now that like you've looked at that you haven't touched yet that you want to get your hands on?
Two things. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my buddy Rand Vernier's Blackbirds. That just came out there.
Ooh,
Blackbirds.
that art looks so dope.
Nice.
Oh, it's
There's
incredible.
so many
It's
books
very,
I just want to own, even though I'm never going to use the physical versions of them.
it's a big old chunk too. This thing's like a telephone book.
I love that artwork. Yeah, that's awesome.
The other thing I have yet to try actually is Blades in the Dark. Heard
Me too.
great things about Blades in the Dark. Haven't got to play it yet. So those would be the two. I mean, for the most part, it's funny because you asked me about systems, and that's a good question because people ask me, it's like, oh, what have you not got to do yet? I'm like, I do what I want. Like, nothing. If I want to do it, I do that thing. You know. But those are things I haven't had a chance to do yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's cool.
Yeah, I have a very long list of games and systems that I want to run or play in, and it never goes down because it always grows every time a new game
I
comes
feel
out.
like it keeps going up.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
you
a
know,
problem.
have you been to Gen Con by chance?
I'm going this year, first time.
First time
Yeah,
I went to
I'm
Gen
excited.
First time I went to Gen Con was 2018, I think, possibly
Mhm.
2019, but I think 2018. And I didn't realize how many games there were until I was at Gen Con. And I just look, it just in every direction is a different game. Like there's truly more than you can play. What I will tell you is a handy trick for being able to do things like this, which of course lends itself better to some systems than others,
Mhm.
is to have a single story that you adjust to the system in like terms of like one shots. You know what I mean? Like you do
Yeah.
it like almost like a Quantum Leap type story where you're
Mhm.
like, well, these characters go different places and do different things. I mean, if they land in the Tin Candle world, that's probably not good.
It's over.
But,
Story's done.
yeah.
Right.
You know, but besides that though, it's an easy way to take off some of the cognitive load, you know, where it's like, well, we're in a new place. What's this like? And then they know that since they
Yeah.
have the same characters, it's the system that they're kicking around rather
Yeah.
than just finally trying to get their bearings of this new character, this new system, this new place, and then you're off to the next one.
Yeah, I have some friends that work at Modifius that are going to be there, and I already know I'll be looking at their stuff, let alone the millions of other game booths that are going to be open at Gen Con. So I'm going to try not to bring too much money with me, babe. I promise.
Okay.
It will soak up everything you've got to spend. Trust me.
Yeah, I can bet.
I really want to play that Jane Austen type game because that
Good
sounds like a lot of
Society.
fun. Good Society.
Yeah, man. Yep, absolutely. It's there's the standard Good Society, and some people have already reskinned it to kind of do the like Pride and
Fave.
Prejudice and Zombies type version of it too. You know,
Nice.
so you can have whatever you want there.
If I run it for you, I'm gonna do the Fae and Flowers version of it and add some D20 into it, so I can have some stuff I'm familiar with that I like too as the GM. If you're gonna make me run Regency stuff for you, I gotta at least have something that you
I
be
love
interested
Regency
into.
stuff. Don't be a hater.
It's true. You know, broaden your horizons.
I'll try.
Play the game. Play the game as intended, and then
We'll see.
modify.
We'll
It's like
see.
tasting your food before you season it. You know, it is ungentlemanly to start pouring salt and pepper before you tried it.
Fair enough.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
As an actor, I have to ask, what are this is the last question for me? What are some of your favorite TV shows to watch?
Well, I mean, obviously, because the season finale of The Mandalorian just came out last night, that's kind of got some top of mind awareness. Andor was an achievement. I'm neck deep in season 6 of My Hero Academia.
Me too. I fell behind on it. I was caught up, and now I'm like behind 8 episodes.
Yeah. No, I just finished the first arc. I am watching Demon Slayer as it's coming out. Season 3 Demon Slayer.
Nice.
I actually don't. I know I just listed like 5 things, but I actually don't get to watch a lot of television. I'm way behind because usually I'm when I watch TV, I like to just stop and watch it. You know what I mean? Like I don't really multitask when I'm watching TV. Like I'll throw a stream on in the background. Yeah, but there's not a lot of time I have to stop and be like.
Yeah, I have so many.
Watch it, right?
I have so many animes that I want to start and watch that I have no time to do. I'm trying to just get through Hunter x Hunter and My Hero right now because I'm trying to fit. I'm on the last arcs for both of them. I'm trying to catch up, but it's so hard sometimes. You miss a couple episodes and it falls off.
They say that more Hunter x Hunter's coming, but they've been saying more Hunter x Hunter's coming for a long time.
They said the manga's gonna start getting production. I don't know if that's gonna translate to the show or not, but I just got the Chimera art, so I'm like in that last stretch now. So
the last Hunter x Hunter I saw was when they were going through that like huge challenge to even get licensed.
Damn, you're pretty far back,
Yep. It's
but like season 2, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Hang on a second, but my buddy Keith Silverstein voices Hisoka, and so almost every time I'm with him, somebody comes up and asks him to talk like Hisoka, and he does it. So it's pretty funny.
Hisoka's creepy. I don't know if I'd want him to talk to you about like Hisoka.
Well, here's what's funny. My youngest daughter runs away when he does. Like
she can't should. Hisoka should not be around kids. Your daughter should run away.
And yet, you know,
Right. What you would really like if you get more time to watch anime is definitely Bungo Stray Dogs. That's a really good anime. It kind of has like that because it's kind of like My Hero, but it's a little bit darker. But it has that aspect of it. But it's really good. Bungo Stray Dogs.
My 2 favorites besides Demon Slayer that I'm also behind on are Sword Art Online, which is oddly divisive, but I think that's because I've never had a bigger difference between the dub and the sub in an anime than Sword Art. Because Kirito, the main character, is like the sweetest boy, and like you love him in the dub, and he's this cocky douchebag. In the subtitles, he's that, and he's this cocky douchebag in the dub, which I've never understood. Like the sharp. So when people hate that show, I'm like, you watched the dub, didn't you? Beyond that, I have no dog in the fight of dub or sub. I find whichever I experience it as first is what I tend to prefer.
I tend to default to dub because I know I'm gonna do something in the background. It's hard to watch sub while I'm not completely watching it. But yeah, we love Sword Art until we stopped at Allison. Oh my god, I can't pronounce it. Allison Assassination. Yeah, we could not. Once it got to that point, kind of fell off with it. But Sword Art's so good.
I finished all that. I got to the one past that even where Kirito's like trapped in a fantasy land or something that I haven't finished that one, so I'm behind there. And Fate Stay Night, the Fate Stay series, it is just incredibly difficult to watch them in the right order because because they keep they've retold the main story like 3 times, and then they've done like alternate versions of the main story, like, oh, what if this, what if that, what if this, what if that, and if you don't know which is which, it's like, the hell is happening? It's like, imagine if they redid My Hero Academia, but Endeavor was the #1 hero and always was, you know?
Right.
Like but so it's all the same characters, but they've shook everything up, and if you don't know that, you're like, what?
Confused, right?
You know? Yeah. Like,
are you enjoying the nonstop action of season 6 of My Hero so far? It's like it's so insane.
No spoilers, man.
just a lot has happened. Yeah, you know, it's you on Twitter. I've been doing a spoiler-free live reaction to the episodes, and you can see.
Yeah, I
kinda
saw
how
I
I've
saw
been-
the start of that with the All Might game. I
Dude.
was like, yeah, bro. I was like, you're gonna get into some shit. Get ready.
I'm only on season 3, so I'm a little behind.
You're very far
Nope.
behind. Yeah, you're
That's-
just
hey.
you're just when they're getting ready to do the exam for their licenses. I think.
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
so
still have a while.
you haven't even gotten to the overhaul arc yet, have you?
No, she's
No.
I
not.
think the overhaul arc was when I really became a fan. Like I was watching it up until that point, but I was
Mhm.
like, oh wow, like that last.
That's what I heard.
The sequence with Lemillion and Overhaul. Actually, I take that back. The first the I don't know when it was. So I don't want to spoil it, but a sequence between All Might and All for One. I was like,
yeah.
oh okay. Oh, okay. You know
Yeah,
what I
she's
mean? I was
What
like,
funny enough, what got her into watching the show again was we went and saw the new movie, and I brought her with me, even though she didn't
Yeah, it
no
was
idea
so
what's going
good.
on, and she was just like, "Okay, I gotta watch the show now." That was so
Yeah, I was
good.
like, this is good. I gotta watch this show.
It's yep. I haven't seen the movie yet. In fact, we tried to see it this week, but we decided we were gonna finish season 6 and then we're gonna watch it. So
Yeah, the movie,
Yeah.
all the movies, honestly, are so good.
yeah, I've seen the first 2. I just haven't seen the third one.
That higher budget helps because it's like the graphics are insane in those
Yep.
movies.
Yep.
But we could babble for My Hero forever. So,
Yeah.
um,
Tokyo Ghoul's another good one too.
yeah, let's we're gonna keep talking about anime this one.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, thanks for joining us today. This was awesome. This was a great
So
chance
much
to talk
fun.
to you and actually meet you face to face instead of just exchanges over Twitter and stuff.
Nope.
My first time ever talking to you, so it's been lovely.
Yeah, awesome.
Pleasure's been all mine. And yeah, I'm about to jump out of here and go do a one shot like right now. So,
Yeah. So why don't you tell?
I'm-
Obviously, I think everyone knows where to find you. But why don't you tell everyone to find you on the internet, and then if you have anything upcoming that you want to talk about as well.
B.Dave Walters. You can find me at B.Dave Walters all over the interwebs, all over the tweetagrams. Let's see. 14-day DM and 14-day player. If you look on Twitter, you'll find links to both of those. You can use code 14day50, get 50% off. Got an event coming up in Atlanta, May 8th through 11th and 14th through 16th, I think. Again, linear time is a lie. That one is pinned at the top of my Twitter if you want to come play Vampire or D&D with me. Otherwise, the best thing is just follow me on the tweetagrams. I'm always doing something. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for joining us. As always, you can find me everywhere at Pluto's Cleric and Jenny everywhere at Just Being Jen. But we will see you guys next week.
Right.
Have a good one.
Love you guys. Bye.